They'll say it was just luck or that you had something they didn't, but what they won't acknowledge are the countless hours in silence facing wars no one else could see. They won't know about the early mornings when all you had was a dream and a choice to keep moving. They'll miss the still moments where you could have collapsed, but chose not to. Real strength isn't stumbled upon. It's not inherited or granted. It's constructed carefully in the shadows. It's built through consistency, molded in loneliness and proven in storms. You don't find clarity, courage, or peace by chance. You attract them by being the kind of soul they're drawn to. And when your mind has been trained, really trained, the world adjusts, not out of coincidence, but because you've shifted what you emit. If something in this strikes a chord, there's one small free request. Hit subscribe and let's begin. This isn't a destination, it's a pattern. You step into a silent rhythm that most never even perceive, but once it resonates you can't unhear it. Real power doesn't show up loudly, it builds quietly. Layer upon layer, repeated action, unwavering clarity. It's like tuning strings on an instrument, not for pretty sound, but for accuracy. So every chord, every action hits its mark. You shape your perspective. The same way, not through drama, but through consistent focus, a craft. No one sees but one that redefines you. The early shifts go unseen. The world won't recognize the morning rituals, the quiet resetting of intention, the tiny yeses that keep you centered, but they accumulate, and eventually the results speak loud enough to drown every excuse to live with that kind of power, to remain grounded in it. You start here. Your mind isn't the enemy, but it is untamed, strong, brilliant, and capable of building or destroying. If left on its own, it will drift to distraction, doubt, and escape. But when directed, it sharpens, defends, and leads. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate." And that is most people's reality, living on autopilot, following a script written by a mind they've never questioned. That's why the first action each morning isn't external, it's internal. Before the messages, before the world pulls you out of alignment, you meet yourself in stillness and choose what presence enters the day, not what's expected, but what's essential. You don't wait for inspiration. You don't need motivation. You move because you decide to. You build because that's who you've become. This isn't a reaction, it's a design. This isn't about pretending to be okay. It's not about empty positivity or forcing beliefs that don't feel true. It's about accuracy, depth, real alignment. Marcus Aurelius didn't wait for peace to choose character. He lived it in the midst of uncertainty, because inner power isn't about wanting less resistance. It's about being someone who remains when everything else falls apart. You don't demand respect from the world. You quit waiting for signs. You stop hoping someone will notice you, approve you, or grant you permission. Instead, you transform into a presence the world can't look past, not through volume, but through substance. Real presence begins in a place most people never look. Identity. Plato once said, "The first and greatest victory is to master yourself." Man, that's the true fight. Every core belief you carry is either guiding your focus or blunting your potential, and identity isn't discovered. It's crafted with precision, with discipline, with purpose daily, thought by thought, action by action. Are you just getting by, or are you building something that lasts? There's a huge difference. One hesitates. One executes. The majority never stop long enough to examine the narrative they're following. They feel trapped, but never check the script written years ago by fear, by conditioning, by someone else's definition of limitation, and they're still repeating it, hoping something will shift, but you weren't made to repeat. You're here to rewrite, to take back the pen. Not through wishful thinking, but through intentional revision. You silence the noise, cut self-pity at its root, rebuild thoughts that empower, not sabotage, and over time, your mindset becomes a framework. Stable enough to stand when the pressure shows up because it always does, that's not. Negativity, that's reality. As Aristotle said, you will never do anything in this world without courage. It's the soul of the mind, next to honor. Courage is what holds you in place when everything tries to unravel you. It's what centers you when fear gets loud. Others will doubt you. Some will smile while doing it. Your own mind will try to pull you back, and distractions will masquerade as opportunities, as emergencies, as escapes, but a disciplined mind stays alert, sees the pattern, remains grounded. It adjusts. It learns, it sharpens through trial. So let me offer something honest. What are you feeding your mind when no one is watching? Is it stillness or static, substance or surface? Are you letting envy and complaint take root, making you believe you're already behind? Or are you sowing thoughts that center you, that elevate you, that remind you who you truly are when the world forgets? Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." And most people live asleep, with their eyes wide open, always looking out, chasing deadlines, approval, fads, but none of that was designed for you. It was designed to distract you from developing yourself. If your mind is tuned to everyone else's noise, you'll forget your own frequency, you'll drift, and that drift is dangerous. You weren't born to scroll through life. You were made to script it, and it starts with what you choose to let in. Not every opinion deserves space. Not every message is worth energy. You don't need to follow every trend to stay true to your purpose. Clarity comes from filtering. Focus comes from choosing, from guarding your mental gates and clearing out the clutter. That's where your strength begins. Not when eyes are on you, but when it's just you and your inner dialogue. Those are the defining moments when scrolling is easier, but you stay present, when complaining is natural, but you correct instead. That's the work, and it won't look dramatic, but it's everything your mind is. Ground more powerful than you think. Every thought is a seed, and your feelings, they're the water. Your emotion feeds whatever you're planting, even when you're unaware. The mind doesn't filter for truth, it grows what you give it. That's why people stay stuck in cycles. They never meant to start, not by design, but through repetition. And whatever you repeat becomes your reality. But here's the power. Once you become aware, you can change everything. You can plant on purpose. Feed your mind order instead of chaos, strength instead of stress, direction instead of distraction. Ask yourself, are you reinforcing action or excuses? Are you crafting a mind that leads or one that waits, wonders, stalls? Because the divide between where you are and what you're capable of isn't crossed in one leap. It's forged between small decisions, in the choice to stay still, when the urge is to escape, in the discipline to channel energy to what matters, not to what's loud, in the practice of waking early and starting with intention before the world interrupts. It's the weight on your shoulders and the voice within saying, "This mind is mine. I don't drift. I decide." That's what divides the focused from the fragmented. Not talent, not luck. Just repeated alignment with who you're choosing to become. But what does it mean to truly decide? Real decision isn't about picking between two options. It's not a wish. It's a vow, a total unbreakable commitment, a defining line in the sand where you declare, "This is where it stops." That old version of me does not move beyond this point. As Aristotle once said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And knowing yourself means recognizing the pieces that don't belong in the future you're building. So ask yourself, who has to go? Not dramatically, but truthfully. The version of you that stalls, the one that calls comfort patience. The one that shrinks under pressure and spins a justification to cover it. That version can't lead, can't carry. Vision can't thrive in the life you're designing, so you lay it to rest. You replace it with a new standard, a new set of actions that match your intention, not because it's easy, but because staying small is no longer a viable option. And what's left when you let that old self die? Stillness, strength, clarity. A trained mind doesn't spiral in doubt. It doesn't chase emotion like it's a signal to follow. It doesn't stall, it moves with purpose, with unruffled certainty. It knows the path and walks it, steadily, not in panic, not in haste, but with focus, because it's been conditioned not by mood, but through consistent action. Motivation isn't needed, movement creates its own momentum. You don't wait for the right feeling. You move first, and the mind catches up. Readiness arrives in motion. That is power, not energy. That fades when things get tough, but discipline that deepens when it does, to be the kind of person who moves from identity, not impulse. As Socrates said, the secret of change is to focus not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And that's what this is: not a war with your past, but a blueprint for your future. One thought, one behavior, one silent internal commitment at a time. This is where the divide emerges. The dabblers wait, needing signs, motion, mood. The disciplined build quietly. They don't wait for permission or alignment from the world. They act, they step, they trust their own training. They don't need a push from outside. They're pulled from within. Purpose drives them, and that energy, it doesn't just fuel progress. It rewrites reality slowly. The world begins to shift, not because you forced it, but because you became the kind of person it must respond to. Most people get that backward. They think it starts externally. If the environment improves, then they'll focus. If they receive encouragement, then they'll believe. If conditions are perfect, then they'll begin. But reality doesn't transform for hopes, it bends for standards. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate." Meaning, until you raise the standards silently operating in your mind, your life will continue on the same track, no matter how much you claim to want change. So pause and look closely. What do your current standards reveal about you? Are you entertaining thoughts that were never yours to begin with, clinging to beliefs rooted in fear, failure, or limitation passed on by others? Are you still speaking like you're waiting for permission, waiting to feel ready, waiting for a sign to begin? That way of thinking, it must be cut off completely, not examined, rejected. Stop speaking like someone who hasn't started. The moment you begin to speak from strength, even whispered, you shift the entire framework of who you are. You start rewriting yourself from the ground up. Say it with conviction. I'm already moving. Don't talk like a struggler barely hanging on. Speak like a creator, someone constructing something real and meaningful. Don't think like a critic who analyzes themselves into paralysis. Think like a designer who sees structure where others see emptiness, who sees the finished form before a single brick is placed. That's where the shift begins, not through hype, but through practice, repeated again and again, not only in speech, but in action. What you rehearse becomes memory. What you remember becomes choice. You don't stumble into a new life. You program it, thought by thought, until the path becomes instinct. This isn't theory, it's neurology. Every time you choose a thought or behavior that matches the future you envision, you wire it deeper into your system. Repeat it enough, it becomes you. That's how identity is rewritten. That's how the future is built. One thoughtful repetition at a time. So speak power not just when it's convenient, but through every internal conversation, every action, every unseen moment. Let your energy whisper, I know who I am. I know where I'm headed. Most people don't notice when they're repeating fear, rehearsing resignation. They speak from a place of defeat without questioning it, but not you. You felt the call to something greater. You look where others look away. You build when others hesitate. You don't wait to be chosen. You choose yourself. And that means stop acting like a follower. Stop giving the world the power to determine your mood, your timing, your focus. That power is yours. Take it back, not with noise, but with presence. A grounded presence that doesn't need validation. Think with force, move with decision, speak like someone who no longer negotiates with their own weakness. And no, that doesn't come from confidence. Confidence is just the echo, it's the result, not the source. Real power is quiet. It doesn't need to announce itself. It's rooted in clarity, focused, firm, still. And clarity is never random. It's forged through commitment, not to the outer world, but to the inner one, to the voice you heard before the world got loud. Clarity begins by remembering the vision, not the one you posted online, but the one you scribbled in a notebook or whispered in silence when no one was looking. The vision that felt too wild to share, too raw, too different from what was expected. But it never left. It's still there, waiting for you to stop explaining and start living it. So reclaim it. Reclaim your mornings, the untouched space before the world rushes in. That's where you refine your edge. That's where direction is set. No alerts, no input, just you, uninterrupted. That's where identity is reinforced. That's where you remember what truly matters before the world tries to redefine it. Reclaim your focus in a world hungry for attention. Guard yours like gold. Strengthen it. Point it toward what actually matters. Because Aristotle was right. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, isn't an act. It's a habit. Focus is your habit now. Intention is your default setting. And if you want an advantage, it's this. Your ability to stay with yourself longer than the world can distract you, to remain centered while others chase speed. Your edge isn't in hype, it's in depth, stillness, composure. When the world is spinning in chaos, that's not a setback, that's your advantage. Your calm is your armor. So when it gets tough, and it will, don't step back. Don't confuse discomfort with failure. Most people do. But resistance isn't a sign to stop. It's a sign to begin. It's the exact place where real transformation takes hold. The point where the old you would have quit, now you push through. Growth never arrives gently. It shows up as tension, as pressure, as the collision between who you've been and who you're becoming. Carl Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." That's not just philosophy, it's reality. Growth demands something from you, and that cost is pressure. But pressure builds the strongest foundations, the sharpest insight, the deepest wisdom. So when it comes, don't run, use it. Let it sculpt you. Let it chisel away what no longer serves you. Turn your losses into lessons. Let setbacks sharpen your patience. Let tension become refinement. A disciplined mind doesn't fear the storm. It integrates it, converts it into fuel. That's the divide. Suffering waits for rescue. Power stands up and walks through fire. This isn't about flash or force. Real power is quiet. It doesn't perform. It doesn't control. It grounds itself. When you enter a room with it, people feel it before you even speak. Socrates said, "The greatest way to live with honor is to be what we pretend to be." And that kind of power isn't borrowed. It's earned. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't need to seek approval. This version of you isn't here by luck or timing. It was built with intention, with discipline, brick by brick, every thought a stone, every habit the mortar. Even the pain was turned into fuel. The process wasn't pretty, but it was powerful. Your self-talk became structure. Your daily patterns became protection. When weakness showed up, there was no debate. You stayed aligned with what you were building. Excellence isn't a peak, it's a pattern. As Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do, and true power is built from the base up. You weren't meant to merely exist. You were meant to lead with clarity, with abundance. To give without draining, to raise standards not out of entitlement, but because you've become someone worth following. You lead without ego, you lead with presence. The training doesn't end, it's daily, it's focused. Repetition becomes transformation. When your mind is conditioned, everything changes, thoughts evolve, decisions get sharper, words carry intention, and the world responds, not by chance, but as a reflection of who you've become. This kind of power doesn't push the world, it pulls it. The world doesn't shift because you wish it to. It shifts when you do, at the level of belief, of thought, of identity. Train the mind and the world follows. If this resonated, there's another video waiting on your screen. It goes even deeper. Thank you for being here and for walking this path with Stoic Journal. This space is for those who think deeper, move slower, and build stronger. I'll see you in the next one. Same focus, same clarity. Stay steady.